Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We are getting one day closer to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Thank goodness. The Masters is over. Thank goodness. So we don't have to hear, Tiger Watch. It's like, never seen a bigger blow up for a guy who hit 78 in the final two rounds, but okay. And a lot of other things, but we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, in the next day or two, I'm going to be launching Buckology on Sportsology, and that will basically detail some of the good things and bad things that Buck Showalter does that nobody else does in Major League Baseball. He's been doing this his whole career. Mike's very aware of him because he was the manager of the Yankees for a while. So, as an example, he already had his first bad one yesterday. So, there's a moment in the game. Their closer's on bereavement. Something happened in his family. He had to go, right? So they're in the, I want to say it was the seventh inning.
Mm-hmm.
It was the seventh inning, and they had a choice between Trevor May and Seth Lugo, but instead they went with Williams, who, because Buck had decided before the game started that he needed to get in there. We're talking, this is game 3 of the season. Well, game 4 yesterday. Game 4 of the season, because the Mets have won the first 3. So, of course, Williams goes in there, and he doesn't do well. He gets hammered, and the Mets lose. And so everybody's like, well, on the broadcast, they're like, all right, let's see. Maybe if May was hurt, we'll give Buck a pass. May was not hurt. This is just Buck deciding ahead of time. He wants to get all of his guys in, and he wants to get them in early. And it's like,
but Russ,
you don't do that in today's Major League Baseball when there's a certain pecking order in a bullpen where you still have the same guys and it's worked before. Why would you try?
Okay, even though Buck Showalter is an old-time manager, they say he is in it with analytics. And I saw the Yankees are carrying 16 pitchers, okay? And they used, I think they used every one of them in this 3-game series against the Red Sox. And the only one I think that they repeated using was Loizaga, who's like their main setup guy. But, they're rolling out Clark Schmidt and Wandy Peralta. That's what analytically, that's what they want to do, Kev, is they're even situationally, they're using everybody in the bullpen. They're not, especially early in the year, they're not going to overwork these guys. So I don't know if this is Buck being Buck or if this is Buck just following the analytics.
Yeah, the Tigers are doing exactly the same thing. That for their extra players, they've added pitchers as well. And the whole idea is not to overtax them early. And so that's just their philosophy of it. Yeah, I don't know that you can. There'll be plenty of times you can go after a Buck, but this may be early.
Well, there's another one that I didn't reveal that'll be in the column that is definitely a Buck move, and everybody knew it was a Buck move, and it didn't work out, and it helped to set up that inning that helped to set up the loss. But that I withheld that for.
Now, I mentioned this on Twitter last night because I gave it a chance and I watched it, and maybe that's my fault. But the ESPN is taking the idea that they had with Peyton Manning and Eli Manning and doing a secondary audio broadcast to their games. And last night was Red Sox Yankees, and it's Michael Kay, who's the Yankee announcer, with Alex Rodriguez. So they're calling it the K-Rod show. I like Michael Kay. I've always liked him. I like his talk shows. I like him as a Yankee announcer. This was really sort of dreadful, and they were like really pulling. It was, they're thinking of, usually the booth now is 3 people, like Hernandez and Darling and I'm sorry, Russ, who's the third part?
Gary Cohen.
Gary Cohen. So usually, it's a 3-man booth, and now it's a 2-man show, and they're really pulling things. And then there must have been a prerequisite to be a steroid cheat, to be a guest on this show, because first of all, A-Rod is one, and the first guest was Big Papi, and the second one was Roger Clemens. I was waiting for Barry Bonds and the guys from Balco to be on this damn show. It was so ridiculous. But Kev, I like the idea of the secondary audio broadcast. I do, but it's got to be entertaining, and at least Peyton Manning and Eli Manning are sort of entertaining. A-Rod is not entertaining. He's just a blowhard. He was a great player, and everybody seems to love him on the Fox broadcast or on the ESPN broadcast. I don't get it, but it just left me wanting more.
Yeah, no, sometimes it doesn't work for you. I get it, and what I tell people is, well, then don't watch it. Like I like that they're trying it, trying to do something different, and they're trying to save baseball for the younger generation. To be honest, they're trying to.
I will tell you, on the ESPN broadcast, I watched a little Red Sox Yankees last night. It did a very good job. Carl Ravitch did a good job of showing the new electronic system that some teams are using for the signal calling for the catcher and the pitcher, and now for some of the players on the team. And it's basically on the catcher's, it's in the shin guard, and he basically presses a button, 1 for fastball, 2 for whatever, and all he has to do is cover up what button he's pressing, and the rest gets sent electronically to the pitcher, to maybe even a shortstop, and maybe even the center fielder. Some teams are doing that. And
here's what I don't get. Maybe you can answer this, Ross, because you keep track of this. So the Tigers aren't doing it because they say they don't like it. They don't think the technology is perfected. But why wouldn't you try it? Because it's nothing. If it doesn't work, you just shake your head or touch your shoulder, and then you just put the sign down.
I think there's probably somebody who's very old school there that just is summarily just saying, not us.
Yeah.
Because when they were showing it on the broadcast, it looked seamless, Kev. Like it just.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know some have used it and some have not, and that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, well, is Michael Jello in charge of the Tigers? Where he just has to be negative, so we just can't try it.
So. No, I'm for it because I saw it in action. It looked like it was very good. And if you think about it now, what is the point if you're a batter of turning back to look at the catcher when you don't know what the buttons are, and now you're not going to see what he's pressing? There's no more point to sign stealing. They basically have done away with it. Speaking
of that, I saw something on the Baseball Network where, God, I can't even remember the guy's name now. The guy was on he was on a lot of different teams. He's very funny.
Kevin Millar.
Kevin Millar.
Yeah, was it Millar? No, it's not Millar.
Okay.
But it's another guy who was a journeyman player.
Okay.
But anyway.
Huck Martinez.
He said that he never, ever relayed any signs. He goes, maybe I just wasn't a good enough player, he said, I never really did it. He said, basically he just said, and then I heard another player said, yeah, I never really did it either. He said, everybody talked about it, but he said, I don't know, maybe I just never could pick them up, or I wasn't comfortable that I could do it quick enough. Or he says, but I never, ever did that. So I made me think, I wonder if they surveyed like what the percentage really is. Like, there's no doubt that some people have done it, but I bet it's less than we think, just because it's not as simple as people make it out to be, because you got to, be able to do it quickly. And, not everyone's eyesight is
are pretty wily. Look, the catchers were always looking up at the hitter, at the pitcher,
right.
Up at the hitter, at the pitcher. They're watching their, they tape their fingers. Like there was a whole thing to it.
Oh, well, it's funny because the one insightful thing that came out of that show that I watched yesterday was Roger Clemens talking about A-Rod had asked him a question about signs, and apparently him and Posada, or him and whoever catcher was with the Yankees, he was the one calling the signs. And I don't know how he wouldn't say, even in retirement, how he didn't. Apparently he was golfing with Chase Utley, and Utley asked him. And I'm Russ's favorite player, Chase Utley.
Two gems for me, yeah.
Yes, there you go. There you go. Chase Utley asked him about you were calling the game, and he's like, yeah. And he's like, well, how did you do it? And he says, I'm not going to tell you. It's like, what are you going to do? Use it for your book? No, I'm like, are you going to make a comeback? You're 55 years old. No, he's just not going to do it. It's like, I don't get that. It's like, once you're retired, who cares?
Well, I can add something to that story.
Sure.
Whoever was the analyst for the Yankees game that I was watching on MLB Network, well, he was a catcher. I couldn't figure it out. I was trying to sort it out. Who was in it?
John Flaherty, maybe?
Maybe John Flaherty. Maybe that's who it was. I just didn't know the Yankees broadcasters. But anyway, he was saying that he didn't know whether he was going to make the team, and it was up and down. He didn't know until the very last minute. And when he was on the plane going up to New York for the first time, Clemens came back and said, "We're going to have to talk about the signs." He would not tell him how he does it until he knew absolutely that he was going to make the team. He wouldn't go over it with him.
Yeah, except I wonder what the beanball sign was on Clemens, because I think he did that one on
That's what it was,
yeah.
Russ.
Yeah.
The catcher drops the middle finger. That's what
I think if you hit 2 or 3 homers off him like Piazza did, you just got it. It didn't matter.
Last thing, because this was one of Clemens' final appearances. And if you remember, and I think I've told this story before, when A-Rod was rounding third base, and I think it was Brett Lawrie who was the Blue Jays third baseman, and A-Rod called like he was one of the infielders to screw with him, and then one of the Blue Jays pitchers threw at A-Rod and hit him in the back. Right. So the next game in this series, I was at that game. Clemens is pitching. He pitches a gem. I think it's like 06 or 07. He pitches a gem. 7 innings, like 1 run, maybe no runs, like 10 strikeouts. Comes out in the 8th inning. And apparently, I found out this out after the fact. He was done after 7, but he told Torrey, "Put me out there for the 8th inning. I'm gonna do something." And Alex Rios was the guy at the plate, and he hits him right with the first pitch. They said, "Have the guy in the bullpen ready. I'm gonna do something." And what he did was he beaned the guy in response to them beaning A-Rod. So that, I don't know if that happens anymore.
Well, I will tell you this. Only because we're talking about the beatings and the retaliations. It was probably 2 years later when the Mets had a chance to retaliate against Clemens beating Piazza, because Clemens actually hit. Clemens didn't hit a lot in his career, like Pedro didn't hit a lot in his career, because they hit a lot of players and they didn't want to get beaten themselves. But I think the Yankees were kind of like, "Listen, you're going to have to hit this game and we got to get this thing over with." And Sean Estes sailed the ball over his head. It was embarrassing. The one time you wanted a guy, at least, or you were a fan of a team, and you wanted someone to get beamed, and he couldn't get.
But Russ, that could have been out of fear, because honestly,
it could have been.
Clemens would come back and actually throw at somebody's head. Anyway, he was nuts. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, April 11th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with some betting odds, because I've been sort of tracking what's going on with the league. As teams get eliminated, now we're getting closer to, and we'll talk about the playoff races in a minute, but we're getting closer to determining favorites for the Cup. And to me, and I know how they determine these, Kev, but to me, and I think this way when I'm doing a fantasy hockey pool, I'm trying to plot what team has the easiest path. What team, you never know. I mean, there are always upsets, but like in a fantasy hockey pool, you're having to pick the best players, but you're also having to pick the best players from the teams that you think will get through. And like the last time I won a fantasy hockey pool, my throwaway team was the Dallas Stars. And that's the reason why I won, because I had Sagan and Gurrianov and Heiskanen, and they went to the final. That's luck. I mean, who the hell was picking the Dallas Stars? But you look at the odds now, and right now, and I'm looking at, I think this is the Sporting News. They're the odds that they've accumulated. The Florida Panthers are plus 275. They're the highest ranked in the Eastern Conference. The highest ranked in the Western Conference, and the favorite overall is Colorado at plus 165, which I believe is you have to bet 100. You have to bet 165 to win 100. That's how the odds work. So start with that. It's like I like Colorado. I think they're a really, really good team. There are still some question marks there.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, if you look at it on paper, like Calgary is a better team. I know Colorado beat Calgary last time they played, but all the little things that we have been taught through the years, like who's better in the face-off circle, who's harder to play against,
right?
Who's better in the penalty kill, those all favor Calgary. But Colorado's a more dynamic team, and in terms of star power, I don't think there's a comparison. Colorado is the team with more star power. But I don't know. I mean, to me, there's so many good teams in the East. So maybe the argument is, well, those teams are going to beat up on each other and then, come through the West. But I think it's an easier trip in the West than it is in the East.
I think that's fair to get there.
Yeah, to get to the final. But, saying all that, I'll replay the quote from the head of the Vegas Gaming Commission that I found in 1987 that I saved on my computer and would send to people when they talk about my predictions. And he said, back then, we make $3.5 billion per year off people who really believe that they've got a handle on who's going to win the playoff games. And it's always been hard to predict what's going to happen in the NHL playoffs because historically there are more upsets in this, but it's been even more difficult in the parity NHL. So post 2005-06 and the rule reformation with the salary cap, it's been much more difficult to predict. And there have been just so many significant upsets and highlighted probably by, the Columbus sweep of Tampa that one year. So
now, so if you look at the odds in the West, Colorado is plus 165 in its goalie FP. If Frank in the chat, if it's minus 165,
right,
it's 165 to win 100. If it's plus 165, it's risk 100 to win 165.
Yeah, I would bet nothing on that.
Right. So Calgary is plus 400. I think that's a much better bet because I look at this and I'm saying, okay, Colorado in the second round is going to have to face the winner of Minnesota St. Louis. Right now, we're talking as of right now. I'm sorry, both St. Louis won a Stanley Cup in the not so distant past, and Minnesota is tough and physical. And if they, I supposedly, right now, if game one started, it would be Talbot instead of Fleury. I'll believe that when I see it. That you don't trade what they traded to get Fleury to have him be the backup to Cam Talbot. But right. Colorado, that's a big hurdle to pass. Calgary, right now, it's either Edmonton or LA. I think Calgary at least goes to the conference final, and then it's flip a coin. So that's that. Like in the East, and I said this to Kevin before we started. I mean the odds in the East right now, as I pull them up here, Florida is plus 275, Tampa is plus 400, Carolina is plus 500, and Toronto is plus 600. Now this is the thing that drives me crazy. 3 of the 4 are in the same division. 2 of them will be eliminated by the end of the second round. Yeah.
The only thing I can tell you,
what bothers you about that? I don't get it.
I'm just saying, it's like I think that the bets of bets on 2 of those 3 teams are sucker bets. I mean, I'm like I don't know.
Because you don't understand betting. Okay.
Right, I know. That's
why you really don't, Micah.
That's why I don't bet, Kev.
I'm not a bettor either. But
I know somebody that preseason when I had said that, hey, I like Florida and Minnesota and Florida probably to win it at that time, and I still think Florida will be the team to win it. At that time, instead of plus 265, I think they were plus 80 or something. So clearly, Vegas hits more of them now than they did preseason, and that's fair based on moves that they've done and how the season's gone along and everything else. Because I do feel like while Minnesota could win the Cup, I feel like Florida really has everything in place. Even that emergency goalie, I still have a lot of faith in Spencer Knight if something were to happen like Bob is just lousy.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, I think Florida has a real good chance of winning it. I mean, they're a really good team. They've scored more than a goal per game, more than they give up, which you don't see, very often. They've got
they have a lot of depth.
Yeah, they got a lot of depth. Zito's really built that roster. Now, this is the NHL, so that doesn't mean they're going to win. But at plus 275, is that what you said?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a bad bet. What I did, I said I'm not a bettor, but last year for the first time, early in the year, the Carolina Hurricanes, who obviously didn't win, but they were at plus 2,000. Yeah. So I put $50 on that just for the fun of it, and those what you got. To me, that's what you got to do early in the season. just identify a long shot or someone that or a team that has long shot odds, and just go for it just for the fun.
I think that's smart. It's funny in this entire wave of while the betting's out there, I bet on one game. Now I have friends who will text me and people who will ask me, but I bet on one. I bet on one basketball game and I won it. And it took me like 2 months to cash the ticket because I wasn't back in Atlantic City for like 2 months after that. And I bet nothing else, but people ask me all the time.
I'll tell you, if granted, I know nothing about betting, but Minnesota at plus 1,000.
Yeah,
sounds like a pretty good bet to me.
Yeah,
not a bad one.
No, I would say that as well. I mean,
they got a shot.
They got a shot. There's no doubt about it. And
the Rangers at plus 900, Russ. That's not a bad bet either.
It's not a great bet though at this point.
For years I've talked about that. My philosophy on playoff games is look at it if they played 10 times over a 2-month period, 10 7-game series, how many would each team win? Which I've always felt is a better way to do it than just say blanket, make declarative statements like, well, this was going to win. So think about it in those terms. Like, what is the percentage? Well, nowadays they talk about percentages all the time, especially in game in the NFL.
Yeah,
where the percentage, you see down at the bottom that this team now has a 12% chance of winning. And it's all based on history of what happens in those game situations when teams are home or away and they're ahead or behind by those particular points. So there is actually sort of a precedent for what happens and how many times that team has won through the years. So you got a sort of a general idea. But I think that's, if you're sort of looking at it, that's how, you have to sort of look at it in those terms, because rarely, that does happen, but rarely do you come across a series where you say to yourself, well, if they played 10 times, one team would win all 10 series. It just doesn't happen in the NHL. In the NBA, I think, that's true, where there is no element to it. So, but, if Florida plays Tampa Bay, I said at the start of this, that was either a 5-5 or 6-4. Well, I've watched both teams lately, and based on what I've seen now, I would say 7-3 or 6-4 Florida, just because Florida I've watched play really well and Tampa hasn't played so well.
There's still, what it is, Kev, but we know, like, it's a series is sort of like a boxing match too. There's going to be games where Tampa brings it to them physically and they've got the momentum that game, and it's going to happen.
But you can't just say, like, it's ridiculous to come and say somebody's going to win that series, because it could go the other way. In hockey in particular,
I will tell you, I know, Kev, you always like making fun of me being like saying that this is going to happen. I did that once at a Flyers practice with Jim Jackson. It was playoff time, and he brought it up to me, and he's like, well, what do you think of Rangers Devils? I'm like, Rangers are going to get swept. He goes, what are you talking about? Why would you say that? I'm like, because I watched both of these teams a lot, and they're going to get swept. And that was, I think, when Yager got hurt, remember, on the push-off?
Right.
And I think they got swept in that. And ever since then, Jim Jackson has never questioned me again.
Yeah. Well, you got a 1 in 7 chance of right. If you believe a team's going to win, you call it in the game. So,
but that was just luck. It was.
Yeah.
I know that.
Now, switching to a couple of the awards, because we're getting down to it. It's 10 games left in the regular season, and obviously we, most people know that the awards, most valuable player, the Hart Trophy,
Masterton,
the Masterton, which I have a vote for, and
me too.
You too, and the Vezina and the Norris. We'll stick up with the Hart and the Norris. Are the Vezina is voted on by the general managers, but the other ones are voted on by writers. The Hart Trophy right now, Bovada has odds on the Hart Trophy, and Austin Matthews is a -400. Connor McDavid is +400. Jonathan Huberdeau is +1,500. Shesterkin, Goudreau, and Goudreau are +2,000, and Draisaitl is +5,000. Let's talk about this, because I continue to think that McDavid and Draisaitl sort of cancel each other out. I mean, they're two great players, but
that's fair. I think that's fair.
So I and I don't know if that means if both of them one of them won't be in the top three, but I think one takes away enough from the other that it's going to be probably impossible for them to win, which limits it to Matthews, Huberdeau, and the rest. Kev, I mean, Matthews, I was at the game on Saturday night. He is on the roll of all rolls. He gets 100 points with his next point, which he definitely will do. He's got 57 goals. He's the highest goal scorer in Leaf history. I mean, everything he touches is going in the net. Sheldon Keefe after the game says, I didn't think he was going to stop from there. I thought he was going to be in a situation where, he was just going to, every time he touched the puck, it was going to go in the net. So
yeah.
What do you think of the
Well, I said this earlier on a different podcast. You have to. There are two sets of people. Some people view this award wrongly as the best player in the league, and it's not that. It's first of all, it's for the season, what the guy is doing this season, but more importantly, it's written and saying most important to his team. So not only has Austin Matthews statistically been dominant, but he also has had such a contribution to his team. And to me, the guy that is closest to him is Shesterkin, who has been so important to the Rangers' success. Had a period where he wasn't so good for a short period of time, but now is back. His last two games have been very good. But if you look at the Rangers and Maple Leafs, they have almost identical records.
Yes.
And this is the way I view it. They've only given up 34 more goals or 36 more goals than the Rangers, despite the fact that their goaltending has not been good since early December, right, Mike?
Right.
And so to me, Matthews, as much as important as Shesterkin has been to the Rangers, I think Matthews has been just as important. So I was a Shesterkin guy all the way through, but now I'm getting to the point where I think it's in my mind it's close, but I think in the voters' mind, and I think that's reflected in the odds, I think people just think it's Matthews in a runaway.
Yeah, and Eck, welcoming Eck into the show here in the backseat of his car.
It sounds good. Yep.
No, you're okay. Austin Matthews would be the first Leaf to win the MVP in 67 years since Teeter Kennedy.
Wow.
In 1955. So if that happens, I mean, we know that everybody says, oh, there's a Toronto bias. I don't know if a Toronto Maple Leaf defenseman won a Norris. I mean, did Tim Horton win one, or Russ? Check that out.
I'm looking.
I don't. I mean, they don't win awards.
If there's a Toronto bias here, what's funny about that, Mike, is like he's an American.
It's against more than it's pro.
So like there's an American bias as well. Usually, there isn't against Toronto bias. Yeah, I do feel that since a lot of the media, not a lot, but they're Sportsnet, TSN, those guys, the loud media, the media that makes a lot of noise, are in Toronto, and I'm dealing with them. And I've been in Toronto, done the Sportsnet shows and all that stuff. It's like there is a definite anti-Leaf thing because they're just inundated with Leafs things all the time. And they want to be not about just the team that's there.
Yeah, so some of them are from one reporter is from Alberta. He's not. Some are from Ontario, but the ones who are from the provinces.
Nobody's ever won the Norris from the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, Tim Horton, who was one of the best defensemen of all time, he never won a Norris.
Alan Stanley was really good. Salming, no.
Salming finished second a couple times. Yeah.
That is surprising. I didn't know that either. Wow. Learning a lot today on the back of the track. I think that. Kevin, everything you said was like dead on to me. I've been Shesterkin the whole way too, and there's no question that without Shesterkin, the Rangers might not be in the playoffs. Without Austin Matthews, the Leafs are not in the playoffs. So I think that those are the two things you can connect together.
I honestly think though of this list, the guy who is the main competitor to Matthews is probably Huberdeau, because Huberdeau is going to end up with like 90 assists, and Florida's going to win the division. But I don't think you can. If Matthews Russ wins a second straight Rocket Richard, and scores 60 goals, something that has never happened. And remember, he's missed games, so he's going to probably end up with like around 60 to 62 or 63 in about, I think, 76 games. So he didn't play 82. I mean, that's just, and you know, the drop off from him and Marner to the rest of the team it's like a 40-point separation.
Right, but he does have Marner. I think he's in my list. I still have Shesterkin in that list, and I think the one guy you're not mentioning is Johnny Gaudreau. He's in my list.
No, that's a good point
because Gaudreau is going to be the quietest 100-point guy in the league right now, and
in the normal season he would be there, you know. But there's just an abnormal amount.
I know, but what's the drop off between Gaudreau and the next highest scorer for Calgary?
And boy, Kev, is he setting himself up for a payday?
Yeah. I just had a long talk with Tom Laidlaw about that. He agrees with you. I told him I didn't buy it with regard to salary drives, but anyway. And the remarkable thing about Gaudreau is, and I think this really is remarkable, is that he's leading the league in even strength points by 7 over Matthews.
Yeah,
that's a significant lead. Yeah, you know, he's not relying on the power play.
Now,
and he's plus 51.
Yeah,
like that's nonsensical.
Plus 54. Plus 54.
He's added 3. Okay, plus 54 now.
That's
plus 54. That's nonsensical.
When was the last score plus 50 in the NHL? Like that's like.
But Matthews is leading in even strength goals with 43. Russ made sure that, you know, to point out that the Leafs PR put it out there that he beat Frank Mahovlich's team record. He's got 43 of his.
He decimated it, Mike. He didn't just beat it.
He eclipsed it, Russ.
He eclipsed it. He had 2 more, and Leafs PR said he eclipsed it.
I use eclipse. It's a good word.
It's all right.
Not when it's only 2. When it's by 10, yes.
Eclipse is defined by completely covering up the light of the sun. So that's not.
Yeah.
But I think that. I mean, 50 goals in the last 50 games or what have you. That number is just that is one of the.
Yeah, that's tremendous.
I mean, that's.
Yeah.
The only thing about that, and I'm you know, it's great. I understand. Promote it. It's a great thing. He's, you know, they're trying to drum up support for the Hawks, and I get that.
Mike is now about to put a negative spin on 50 goals in 50 games.
No, Mac. I'm just saying 50. You know, most of the time when Bossy did it or Gretzky did it, it was from the beginning of the season. It was 50 and 39, and it was the first 39 games of the season. Or Bossy scored 50 and 50. It was the first. It wasn't a segment of the season where he scored 50 and 50. That's the only thing. I mean, it's an accomplishment. I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm just pointing that out.
I'll always take the last 50 games, okay? Because this is a what have you done for me lately league. You know, and the fact that the last 50 games he's been incredibly dominant means that, you know, in our small minds, he's going to be incredibly dominant the rest of the time.
I'm telling okay. Here is the thought process of the rather sizable Leaf Nation fan base. This is great. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
Show me in the playoffs. Otherwise, who gives a good goddamn? That's what they're thinking.
They don't believe that.
Yeah, no, they believe it. Believe me.
No, they don't believe that it's. They don't care about that. I mean, it's important as the Stanley Cup. Well, of course not. But they care about this.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, when he scored his 50th goal at home, and an empty net, the crowd went insane. I think
your presentation of it is an exaggeration. That it's the Stanley Cup. The biggest thing and the most important. Oh yeah, by far, not even close. However, you know, you can compartmentalize that.
Yes.
Where you know there's what he does, there's what Matthews does, and I'm not sure you can, but I think most people can compartmentalize.
I want to put this out to Leaf fans out there, though. Here's the thing, like, you know, if you can't enjoy this moment for a second, like, you know, just like the playoffs aren't now. You know, you can't win a Stanley Cup tomorrow, so you might as well sit back and say.
First, you've known me for 15 years. When have I enjoyed anything?
Well, that's true. That, you know, that's my point. Now that doesn't mean they're not going to be angry as Hornets if they get knocked out in the first round. Well, of course they are. I'm trying
to take the fan out of it. I'm trying to play down the middle here, but I do. I do have lots of friends who are Leaf fans, and a lot of them are saying that. It's like, this is all great, this is wonderful, but he needs to do this. He needs to be the dominating player that he's been in during the regular season in a 7-game series against Boston.
That's like saying this is a beautiful car you have, but what about your house? These are different things.
No, this is a beautiful car that you have, but if the engine sputters, how good is it?
Yeah, but here, I mean, to me, you make it sound as if they will hate Matthews if they don't, and they won't. I mean, they'll appreciate what a talent is. I mean, the Maple Leaf fan base, they're tough for sure, but they're also such knowledgeable people, and they know what he's doing is, hasn't been done before, and that they're going to be telling their grandkids about I saw Austin Matthews live, and
Yeah, I mean, look at W1 in their chat room says exactly Eck. First of all, whenever you say exactly Eck, agree with me, you're going to end up on the show. Secondly, we're probably watching the greatest single season in Leaf history, and that is true, and this is a long history.
You can't say that yet. You can't say that's the greatest. If you want to say the greatest regular season, fine. You can't call it their greatest season.
It's accomplishment by a player.
By his player. Okay, that's fine.
That's what I thought he was meaning by that. This is the greatest accomplishment by a single league player during a regular season. This is it. I mean, this. And the other thing is that has to be mentioned here, and not to be we don't get off the Leafs obviously, but Mitch Marner started off the season terribly. And yet he is actually now people are really saying things about Marner now about he's also in the MVP talks, which is crazy.
Well, nobody is saying that William Nylander is better than Mitch Marner anymore, because Mitch Marner is actually scoring goals. He's got, I think, 31 now. He's shooting the puck much better. The chemistry between him and Matthews, which is something, by the way, that got Mike Babcock fired, because Babcock refused to put Marner and Matthews together. He would always keep them separate. Keefe has done that from the very outset, and only very rarely has he put Nylander back with Matthews. They're a dynamic duo. They feed right off each other. With Michael Bunting has been a good replacement for Zach Hyman. So, all that's great. And the thing is, it's like since the trade deadline, since they made the acquisition of Giordano, they're 8-1-1. So they're really rolling. But as Zach departs, they can play either Tampa Bay or Boston or Carolina. More likely either Tampa Bay or Boston. And Kev, you mentioned before we went live about Tampa Bay beating Buffalo.
Yeah, it was actually a big win. Can you imagine? We said that before.
Yeah,
it was important for Tampa Bay because they played so poorly lately.
Yeah, but here's something though, Mike. I get greatest seasons and everything else, but as an example, right now, in the top 11 100-point guys, or not 100-point guys, top 11 top scoring seasons for the Calgary Flames, Gaudreau has 2 of them with 99. He's going to go well over that this year. And the last guy to get 100 points for them is Theo Fleury back in 1993. So it's like there are a bunch of guys having their greatest seasons, the greatest season in the last 20 years and more for their teams. And that's where this vote gets hard. And that's probably what's going to kill Shesterkin, because the Rangers don't make the playoffs without him. But there's this so much of the run on offense here, he is going to get edged out. That's fine.
In their entire history, there's only been 2 players who have scored over 100 points for Toronto. I looked this up for my piece on Saturday. Doug Gilmour had 2 in 93 and 94, and Darryl Sittler had 2. Gilmour went to the conference finals twice with those teams. Sittler, I think one of the years they got destroyed by, I think it was the Islanders in a first round series, and the other year was a year they played against Montreal in the semifinals. So individual success can breed team success depending on that player being able to keep that level in the playoffs. And last year, Matthews was fantastic during the regular season, won the Rocket Richard, and then didn't do anything because Philip Deneau shut him down in the playoffs. Now, I'm just saying, I'm not taking anything away from Matthews. I'm just saying that he's got to do, for them to win, he's got to do this in the playoffs. And if he doesn't, I'm not saying that they're going to throw stones at pictures of Austin Matthews, but, Zach, are you okay here? Because
Yeah.
Okay, because it keeps.
I think I'm okay. It's just I have at my hotspot. I'm trying to find a hotspot. My hotspot in the right spot here.
Okay, but all I'm saying is that he needs for the Toronto fan base. You know, he needs to play this way to be, and I'm not saying they're not going to accept him.
Yeah, I accept that explanation better than. I mean, you made it sound like it was either or, and to me, it's a conjunction. There's what he did, but that doesn't let him off the hook.
No,
For the playoffs, and I still think that the sophistication of the Maple Leaf fan base is such as they'll recognize this for what it is, and for what an accomplishment it is, and then we'll move on to the playoffs. And now, now he's got to repeat this in order to be for the playoff success. And they won't hate him. I wouldn't expect them to hate him if he doesn't do that, but they're going to be angry. There's no doubt.
I know teams don't do this, but I'm just going to float a scenario here because I was talking to a couple of reporters on the weekend, and we'll get off the Leaf page here because I want to talk about the Norris in a second. But that Toronto should and probably does want to play Boston in the first round, because if it's the difference between playing Boston and playing Tampa, I'm sorry, Boston, I'd rather play you than the Lightning. But if the Leafs play Boston the final game of the regular season, if Boston is up by a point on Tampa, don't you think that the Leafs are calling up the Toronto Marlies to let Boston beat them? I don't know if that mentality is there. If they, that's giving the
I don't think they're going to do that.
bulletin board material.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah,
it's not like you're getting a terrible opponent. You're not getting it's Boston or Tampa. I mean, it's like they're both.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do
it. The difference between the two-time Stanley Cup champion and the Bruins, who are starting a rookie goaltender, I'll take the Bruins. And that's not an insult. I mean, the Bruins are an excellent team, and believe me, if they lose to the Bruins with Bergeron and Marchand, Leafs fans will be going to Shoppers Drug Mart for nitroglycerin pills.
Well, but this is the tough sell part. Okay, so now let's say you're going to go in the locker room, you're going to say to Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews, hey guys, we're not going to play you in this game because we want to face Boston, and so you're going to have to sit out this last game. And then what goes in their heads? Oh, they don't think we're good enough to beat Tampa, so now they're trying to line us up with Boston. Is that the way you really want to go in the playoffs, Mike?
You're not good enough.
Think about the epic.
Okay, Mike, we're not asking you to give the speech in the locker room because you would suck at it, but we're asking.
Think about the epic thing of that situation.
Thanks,
okay?
Rob.
I mean, if you are in a situation, I hope we can hear me because I know I'm going in and out.
We can hear you.
But if you're in a situation where you pick a team to play against like that, and then you play against that team and you lose to that team, it's just like because it's bad on all levels. It's bad hockey karma. It's just bad hockey karma. I mean, especially when then you include the fact that this is the Boston Bruins who've always beaten you up in the past. There's no point. It's not like you could be facing the Capitals or the Lightning. That's different. And even then, don't in hockey you just don't want to do that. The hockey guys just don't like.
And there's no guarantee that Toronto is going to be in that position because they play 5 of their next 6 games against non-playoff teams, and as I've documented very frequently, they suck against non-playoff teams. They've played terribly against non-playoff teams. They played great against the teams that are their equals or that they're slightly below, but they can't. They're playing Buffalo and Philly and Ottawa. It's like I can just see them lose. But anyway, I want to get to
one thing I wanted to talk about before the Norris real quickly because I got a lot of controversy about it in my blog the last couple of days. And if we could, and that is who is better, the Florida Panthers or the Colorado Avalanche? And it is an interesting debate, and there are a lot of different points on it. Instinctually, I just want your opinions, and I'll give you my thoughts on it. But right now they're 2 points apart. They played the same exact amount of games. It's just Colorado has 1 more win. They have the same amount they both have 6 overtime losses. It's really, Florida scored a lot more goals. They've scored like 30 more goals than Colorado.
Well, okay. At this very moment, I would say Colorado because Florida does not have Ekblad.
Right. Well, let's assume Ekblad's back for the playoffs, which I think he will be. From everything I'm told,
and I would say
Kucherov, miraculous Kucherov return. He'll be fine for the playoffs.
And I would say Florida.
I think Florida.
But that depends on what Ekblad we're getting. I was talking to somebody on Saturday, and it's like, you don't know what, Ekblad could come back, Kev, and he could be a shadow of his former self. And then that's actually probably a little bit of a detriment to Florida, because they need him to be the Ekblad before the injury who could play 25 minutes. And if he's not that guy, then he's just taking up space.
Yeah, they're pretty even. But there's two things, I think. First of all, I think Florida is more physical, but they don't have Makar.
Right.
And Colorado has Makar, and he is a impact player of the nth degree. And he's playing Paul Coffey style offense, and he's better than Paul Coffey defensively.
Yeah.
So, so I probably would go with Colorado just on the Makar factor, but I wouldn't feel good about it. So
I'm going to go Florida because I think their defense has more depth, and I do feel like their bench has more depth. And so but I think it's super close.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I wouldn't argue with Russ because I like Florida quite a bit. I've really watched them a lot, and but I made a mistake of discounting Colorado because they can't win face-offs. They're not very good at penalty killing. But doggone it, then I watched them in that game against Calgary, and Calgary's good at all those things, and they were the better team. Colorado, speaking of, so.
And Pete in the chat's like Landeskog is out, Kadri is out. I think they think Gerard is out. I mean,
I'm just counting Colorado at full strength. At full strength.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm counting as well.
I'm still taking Florida.
But the same thing applies to them. If Landeskog and Kadri and Gerard come back and they're not close to 100% effectiveness, then not to say they're taking up space, but you really need them to be as healthy as possible and effective to be able to win.
I mean, in a way, we're all taking up.
Two different questions here, though, too. So there's what team is better?
Some more than others.
Which we just talked about here. What team is better? That's one question. And when I think about better, I give this slight edge to Florida too. But part of that I think is I give Florida the edge in goal, which is kind of counterintuitive.
I think Eck threw his hot spot out the door.
I think they're even in goal.
Yeah,
I'll give them even.
They're different question marks. I mean, at least Florida has a plan B if Bobrovsky sucks, because like last year they went to Dredger, then they went to Spencer Knight, and if Bobrovsky does not play well again, then they can go to Knight. I don't know whether the plan B for Colorado, if Kemper plays badly, do you really think Pavel Francouz can really carry them?
Only if they're down 3 games would they do it.
Right, exactly. Or God forbid if Kemper gets hurt. So,
I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen with the goaltending. That's what I would really say. I mean, either one of them could be hot, and either one of them could go cold, and so I don't know. It just seems like it's a toss-up at goal.
All right, so Norris, right?
The Norris. I'll just give you the top 3 here because I don't think Ekblad or McAvoy really have an opportunity to make it. The odds for the Norris are Makar at -125. Yeah, go ahead. You're breaking up, Beck. We can't hear you.
All right. I'm out.
Okay. He's having it. Okay, so Makar is the favorite at -125. Yossi is even at 100. It's at even odds. Victor Hedman is +1,000, and Adam Fox, the reigning Norris Trophy winner, is +3,300. Thing is, Kev, I thought all along that Makar was going to run away with it, but if Roman Yossi gets 100 points, which is very possible.
Yeah. Well, they're both, but this is so hard.
Yes.
Just because I looked and saw Roman Yossi's numbers are something ridiculous. Like he's got 60 some
68
points.
assists, second in the league.
No, but see, he's got 60-some points in his last 40-some games.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's just really been incredibly hot. And yet, on the other hand, we've all watched Makar, and he's just dynamic and exciting. And, but doggone, I think Yossi's better defensively.
He is.
He's older. He's more mature.
Yeah. And so for that reason, But, and then you add in, I said this the other day, I know a couple of my readers were not happy with me, but would you rather have, because they're relatively close in age, would you rather have Hedman or Yossi? And, I think that's a lot tougher than people think. I would prefer Hedman because of his size.
Yes.
But if they were the same size, then it would be a different discussion.
It would be a different, but you can't take away Hedman's size. That's part of who he is as a defenseman.
Right.
And but Yossi's having the better season, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Here's the way I kind of looked at it. Early on, I was with Fox, but Fox is in a tremendous slump. He's only got 67 points, poor guy. So he's fallen out of it with almost a point a game, and he's falling out of it. I've watched both of these teams in Colorado and Nashville, and as great as Makar is having a season and goals-wise and everything, if Yossi were not in that lineup for Nashville, not only would they not be in the playoffs, they'd probably be one of the 5-6 worst teams in the league.
That's an astute comment. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because sort of under the radar, like Morgan Riley's having a really good season. He's got, I think, 61 points. He's within a few points of Fox. Most of his, his career high is 72. He's not even going to be in the same conversation. I mean, he's having a really good year, but he probably maybe finishes 11th or 12th in Norris Trophy.
I mean, everybody's talking about Huberdeau's assists and Yossi's second in the league.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it needs to be pointed out that this is the best offensive year that we've had in many, many years.
That's true.
So, so we have, grade point inflation.
If we take Yossi off the Nashville power play and take Makar off the Colorado power play, I think Colorado still does pretty well on that power play. I'm not sure what happens to Nashville.
Because they'd have Devin Taves as their point guy instead of
Makar.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happens to the
Nashville. Although Devin Taves there's no comparison in my mind.
But that's a better plan B than
No, I mean it's a good observation.
Yeah, exactly. It's better plan B than Dante Fabro. Okay, so a couple things here. On the weekend, Denver beat Minnesota State Mankato for the NCAA championship. And as soon as that happened, we saw a slew of, even before that, because a lot of the Michigan players started signing, a mass exodus. So I'll just off the top of my head, Owen Power, Matty Beniers, Kent Johnson, Russ's favorite is Blankenberg.
Yep. He got signed first before Power.
Columbus announced him 2 minutes before they announced.
Can I text Yarmo? You'll never know.
Yeah, Brink for sure.
Bobby Brink with Philadelphia. Now, Matthew Nyes, who had a great year with Minnesota, according to Elliot Friedman, he's going to talk to Toronto either tomorrow or Wednesday. It's still up in the air whether he's going to sign or not. I don't know whether it's bonuses or whether he burns the first year.
It's not bonuses.
Yeah, I don't think it's bonuses.
If I'm Toronto, I bring the owner of Canadian Tire again. That's what I do.
Shut up. I mean, come on. It didn't work the first time, Russ. So no, but I mean, they're putting it out there that they don't think it's going to be a problem to get him signed eventually. But according to one report I heard, Logan Cooley, who's is going to go to Minnesota, and Minnesota might be one of the favorites to win it next year. And
is he going to go to Minnesota? We don't know yet. Logan Cooley, he could go into the NHL too.
Yeah, yes, he could. And that's the thing. That's the thing that they really, I mean, I talked to one person, Russ, on the weekend who said Nyes can play in the NHL right now. And I'm like, the only thing that I'm concerned about is, sure, he can play in the NHL right now, but what is he going to be 2 or 3 years from now if he plays in the NHL right now? I mean, they want this guy if they think that this talent at the college level is for real and it can translate to the NHL, he's a power forward, top 6, top 9 guy. But that might be if he develops properly.
Right. I mean, the biggest thing is, look, is this talent that he's seeing at the NHL level real? Yes, because I've seen it in other places too. But with Nyes, I've seen it. What was he in the USHL? I saw it in camp this year. But the issue is, if you want him to be that power forward, even if you play him a few playoff games this year in the end of the regular season, still doesn't mean he should be a lock to make the team next year, because when you start the season, a lot harder. They're asked to play a lot more defensive hockey, and you have to sort of see where the team is at and where he fits in. If he only fits in on the fourth line, you don't want him to play in the NHL. That's really where you're at, where, in the playoffs, you could slot him in somewhere higher and give him sheltered minutes. You don't want to do that with a player that you want to be a power forward and develop. That's the struggle.
Now, I mean, you could say that, if and when the Leafs get eliminated, he can go down to the American Hockey League and play for the Marlies. And, I'm sure like Aberzees and him, if he signs, that's the plan, because they've done that before. But it's all a question of, will he get opportunity in the playoffs this year, and in what role? I mean, if you're gonna bring him up and he's gonna be playing with Jason Spezza and Wayne Simmons in protected minutes, then you're probably better off playing Aberzees, who is 22 years old, or to call up Nick Robertson.
More suited for that.
Right, or call up Nick Robertson, who has had experience in the playoffs and in the regular season, rather than putting a college kid in just right off the bat. And I don't know, Kev. I mean, we've seen that happen over the years. Russ points out Chris Kreider a few years back going right into the NHL, into the playoffs from college.
2 years older, though.
2 years older. It is a risky proposition.
Yeah, but I think that we've seen enough of them that I think you're trying to just catch lightning in the bottle. They're so young, usually they don't know what they don't know, as the saying goes, and they just play on adrenaline. And you can kind of get, catch something there that kind of helps you. There's a kind of a spirited play by a young player who doesn't know any better. And so I think it's worth the risk, as long as you, as Russ called them, sheltered minutes. Right. Where you're careful where you spot them, because, you can create some excitement by doing that. Right.
And Owen Power is slated to make his NHL debut tomorrow in Toronto, which is his hometown, which it works out perfectly. Russ, Kevin Adams, in his media availability after the signing, said they were going to experiment with him because he's played the left side most of the time with Chicago in the USHL and at Michigan and internationally with Team Canada. But they're going to, it's experiment time. It's fine. They're out of the playoffs, so they can do it. But we were talking about this before the show. When you're playing somebody in a position that they're not used to, you can expose them to something that is not good for them.
Yeah, I mean, Power's got terrific skating ability and some physicality. The physical strength isn't all there yet. The offense is where he knows how to pinch and do all that. But again, the same as what we were talking about with Cam York, who's now getting moved to the left side because the Flyers realize, it's tough for him on the right side, especially in a top pairing. He kind of got exposed with Trevor Zegras the other day. It's going to be hard for Power to do that. I don't think that's the smartest thing to do on his first game. I wouldn't do it. If you want to do it after like a second or third just to kind of see, fine, because if it's a disaster, you could change it mid-game. But I wouldn't want his first game against the Leafs with all that coverage to be on a side that he's not familiar with. I just think that's dumb.
Yeah, no, I mean, he could get exposed by Matthews or somebody.
Yeah. Why would you open him up to that? This is like your future best defenseman. No offense to Rasmus Dahlin, who's very good. I think Power might be better. And why would you even do that? Wouldn't it be better to play him where he's more comfortable? You play him his 17 minutes. If he gets on the board, great. If he doesn't make too many mistakes, everybody can write glowing things. It's just, I don't know why you would do it any other way.
Left, right on the blue line, Kev, has become more important over the last few years.
It has.
One of the Detroit Stanley Cup final teams that Babcock had that had,
I gotta run, Mike, sorry.
Okay, that had 6 lefty defensemen.
Yeah. It was less of a deal in the olden days gone by. I've talked about it at length to the older defensemen, and to them it really wasn't a big deal. I'm less militant about that because you can change in 2 shifts. If Power says, I'm not right, you can just change it right away, and it's really no big deal. I think they want to just plant the idea that maybe he could play there, but he's going to be so excited. I don't think he cares where he plays, but we'll see. If they don't like it, I know Don Granato, and he'll change it. Like he's not going to go a whole game if he doesn't think Power is comfortable. And that's the beauty of this sport, is it's shift to shift. Yes. So if first shift doesn't go well, he just moves them.
Yeah. All right. I believe there's only one game on the schedule to tonight, and that's Winnipeg and the Montreal Canadiens. So we'll talk in depth about that game tomorrow. For the departed Eklund, for the departed Russ Cohen, for Kevin Allen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.